Good afternoon. Welcome to Marshfield's COVID-19 Small Business Webinar. My name is Valerie McSorley. I'm the owner of Marshfield's first community collaborative space, The Hive, and a proud member of the Marshfield Chamber Board of Directors. It's my pleasure to welcome you today, and I want to thank you all for being with us this afternoon. We are going to host a live virtual gathering with the best state and local leadership available to guide us through these uncertain times due to the impact of the coronavirus. We have all been impacted in many profound ways, and we're grateful for our leaders making the time to join us here today to address and inform the local community on current updates, available programs, and a greater understanding of how we can all do our part in battling COVID-19. Throughout the next hour, you will hear from a number of our leaders on a variety of topics. I'm honored and privileged to serve as your moderator this afternoon. In terms of expectations over the course of the next hour or so, we have a brief overview to share with you. We've got a slide deck. We'll be taking your questions after we've heard from all of our panelists this afternoon. I'd like to call your attention to the toolbar in the bottom of your Zoom feed, and you'll see a chat feature. You can use that chat feature to send in your questions over the next hour. I will monitor those questions, and as we'll get to as many as time allows. Some may be answered as our panelists and our leaders take their turns in updating you. Please be respectful in your comments, and we're all doing the absolute best that we can right now for our families, our community, and our businesses. Remember, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And with that, I want to turn over our panel and our discussion to our esteemed panel of guests this afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome Marshfield Chamber of Commerce Executive Director Lara Braid, State Senator Patrick O'Connor, State Rep for Marshfield and Scituate, Patrick Kearney, Chief of Police, Marshfield Chief of Police, Phil Tavares, Marshfield Town Administrator, Mark Maresco, and Marshfield Selectman, Chris Rowland. And a very special thank you to Marshfield Community Television and Jonathan Grabowski and his talented team for their technical support of today's broadcasts. So with that, I'd like to open up the conversation, and we've got a slide deck that we'll share with you. And I believe, Senator O'Connor, you're up.
Sure. Valerie, thank you. Lara, thank you. This is great. We've been able to really pull these off in each one of the communities. And we think it's been really valuable to get the community together, to talk about what's going on, and specifically to talk about the impacts that this is all going to have on our main streets, our backbone of our economy with our small businesses. We've been giving a similar slide deck to other chambers of commerce, and I really do believe that this has been helpful. And what I hope to do with this is to have something on a more weekly basis where we provide some updates at the state level, and all the local leaders can get together and really talk and throw stuff off the wall and try and figure out how we can best make as many people whole in this process as possible. So Valerie, if you could go to the next slide. So this is just some basic advice of what's happened. State of emergency declared up until May 4th. Obviously, we'll take a determining factor at May 4th as far as to continue that as it's anticipated. Action has been taken to support small business. We'll get into that in the slide after that. We want to hear from our local officials in Marshfield. Michael and Phil will provide some updates as far as what's going on, boots on the ground right now in Marshfield. Then we'll hear from Lara and Valerie about some of the stuff that the chamber's doing. And then we'd like to hear from you. This slide deck is not that long. Myself and Representative Kearney will go through it. And essentially, once we provide a brief overview of what's been accomplished at the state level and the local level, we want to hear from local small businesses of how we can be helpful. So with that, I'll kick it over to Rep Kearney.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for jumping on. I think that was a great summary and a great 10,000-foot view of what's going to be covered today. I know that we've been working pretty diligently with our federal leaders, other state officials, and local leaders as well to do everything that we can at all the different levels to address, obviously, the crisis that came on pretty quickly. So if you have any questions throughout this, don't hesitate to ask Pat or I. We and our offices have been fielding a lot of questions, whether that's unemployment, small business loans, certain requests from, say, the real estate community on doing transactions virtually. So, if you have any concerns, you have any good ideas, as Pat said, we definitely want to hear from you. So, Val, you want to cue up the next slide? So, as Pat said, really quickly, all non-essential businesses are closed right now. And the stay-at-home advisory right now is until May 4th. And as Pat and I were discussing on a phone call the other day, we are addressing this issue on a day-by-day basis. A lot of municipalities are, but we certainly are at the state level too. And I think Massachusetts is doing an incredible job compared to other states, probably the best job of any state in the country on addressing this issue right now. But I think it'll probably be a soft opening and a phase in over time on May 4th for the businesses. The list of essential businesses is on the slideshow here. And it's pretty much it. We're not, the police departments aren't like driving around looking for businesses on who's open and who's not, but it's pretty much if you have employees and you are really not an essential business, we're asking you to not ask those employees to come in and to stay at home and operate to the best of your ability remotely. So a lot of those businesses obviously suffer from not being open, and I'll probably turn it over to Pat to address some of the opportunities under the CARES Act that Congress passed at the end of March. Obviously, there's a couple different type of loans that can be accessed, not only at the federal level, but some loans that can be accessed at the state level as well, to hopefully get people through this crisis. Pat?
Yeah, if you want to kick it over the next slide there, Valerie. Some of the federal action that's been taken right now, and the governor actually just announced the expansion of the eligibility of unemployment. So this goes to everybody who's basically self-employed, a member of the gig economy, or 1099. So we just got guidance from the federal government last weekend on this, and the Department of Labor and Workforce Development have been trying to look at how to implement this. And unfortunately, the governor has determined that the only way to do this is to build an entirely new platform for our Division of Unemployment Assistance. And he believes that platform is going to take roughly 3 weeks to complete. And so these individuals, although they'll be eligible until to get retroactive claims to February, unfortunately, we don't believe we can start processing these until the end of April. This is something that myself and Rep. Kearney will continue to bring up, and hopefully we can fast track this, but the governor sees no other way, given the guidance we got from the federal government, that this is going to be implemented until the end of this month, basically, which is very disappointing. The increase in benefits, there's a $600 a week supplemental. We started hearing from folks today in our email that this is actually starting to hit some people's bank accounts, and the individuals will be eligible for an additional 13 weeks of unemployment assistance. So the implementation process for the 1099 workers is going to be difficult, but I must say that the Division of Unemployment Assistance, and hopefully maybe in the next one of these webinars we can bring some folks on from the state that can go through this. But our office has been inundated with requests, and it's really a blessing that the system itself hasn't shut down. But it's due to the people who are working this. The folks at the Division of Unemployment Assistance are working literally around the clock to process these claims, and we're getting calls at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. If there's anyone that you know that is still having problems with the system, because some of these things get kicked back, and then once they get kicked back, they're basically put on a list where it might take a week for them to get back to. If you have anyone in those situations, please have them reach out to myself or Rep. Kearney's office. We've been dealing with this pretty substantially since this all really came to a head at the middle of last month. So that's basically a brief rundown on where we are at in unemployment, as well as the expansion of unemployment and the additional $600 kicker a week for the supplemental benefit. I think if you want to go to the next slide, Rep. Kearney, you can talk about some of the SBA stuff.
Yeah, so as Pat was saying, we're trying to do what we can to help those workers that are in the gig economy with unemployment, people that are self-employed. It is a little bit frustrating that it is going to take that long to get them those checks. With that said, I do find ourselves lucky. Not all of the states have disaster declarations that have been accepted by the administration. So there are states that are not extending some of the benefits to self-employed folks that we're able to extend to people in Massachusetts. So although I'm disappointed in the delay, I'm happy that we're able to at least give some relief to those people in that part of the economy. So quick rundown on the federal action. There are two different types of loans that were really included in the stimulus. The big one is the Paycheck Protection Program, $350 billion set aside. You can take loans up to 10 million, and there's all sorts of different criteria. And I know that my office and a couple other offices have put out one-pagers. I know I sent Larry, you have the one-pager on that, but they can take loans really up to 10 million. It's determined by number of people on the payroll, what expenses are. If you do take the loan, you have to keep, I believe, 90% of your employees on the payroll. And anyone that has any questions or needs any help filling out that paperwork, as Pat said, my office and Pat's office has been addressing questions and concerns and helping individuals navigate these programs. The second one, the Emergency Economic Injury Grant. The reason I like this is if you apply for anything less than under $10,000, businesses have been receiving it within 3 days of applying, and anything under 10,000 is automatically forgiven. So those are the two big ones. And if anyone needs any help filling the paperwork out, don't hesitate to reach out. I know that in my discussions with Congressman Keating last week, they are looking at doing a second round of federal stimulus. So I'm sure these numbers will change, and some of the criteria might change with the second round of the stimulus.
I just wanted to add to this too. This has been slowly creeping up as the second biggest issue that our offices are receiving inquiries about, just because the rollout of this program was essentially last week, and on Friday was the time in which they were starting to process these, and it was an unmitigated disaster, for lack of a better term, with banks not really knowing clear guidance of what the feds are doing. From my understanding, this still isn't ratcheted up where it needs to be at this point in time, with people submitting applications. And this is both obviously for small businesses, but this is also for our nonprofit community. This is an incredibly important program, and the feds really have to get this one right. I've been disappointed personally with the two aspects that the feds have been in charge of previously, which is obviously the testing component, which I think that they should have allowed the states to really process that a lot quicker. And the second thing being the personal protective equipment, which I don't think they did a good job handling that either from the onset. So my hope is that as we continue to move forward with this program, there's going to be more flexibility and guidance given to the states to really start processing this on a more local basis, because it seems that throughout this pandemic, the states have been really the ones that have been able to know where they should direct the resources the best. And right now, there's a lot of complications with the Paycheck Protection Program that we hope to see really smoothed out as soon as possible. And I'm sure this is going to be one of the things that we talk about when we have discussion, but to how difficult this program's been so far. If you want to go to the next slide, Valerie. So here's just a list of some of the eligible lenders that are at the local level. And even some of these banks. On Monday, they set up a hotline for banks at a federal level, which in my opinion is an admission that the program wasn't working, because the feds needed to set up even further guidance, direct guidance basically to lenders. This is still, as I said, still an issue. And some of these banks have actually kicked it over to more of a referral program, which we found about yesterday when we talked to the Hingham Institute of Savings. There's a company called Cabbage, which one of the biggest commercial lenders, which is East Boston Savings Bank, one of the biggest commercial lenders, is using a referral program, which I don't think that was the intent of when we started this, to use something like that to match up small businesses and nonprofits with the resources, financial resources they need. So as I said, hopefully these banks get guidance as well as get the backup documentation that they need from the feds to start lending directly to folks in our communities rather than having to go through national referral programs. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll kick it over to the state rep. Pat, you want to take this slide?
Yeah. Sorry, it's just my computer cut out for a little bit. So as Pat said, we've been trying to, and I've been trying to address some of the messages that we're getting in the chat as well. So quickly, there was a question about the $10 million small business recovery loans. The governor has done 2 rounds of those. That was more so to mitigate the damages during some of the debate that the federal government was having on the stimulus package. Unlike the federal government, the state budget has to be balanced every year. So we are not able to certainly to go into debt like the way the feds are. So obviously they're able to offer billions of dollars in loans. We cannot do that at the state level because we don't have the ability to forgive them. So unemployment, I was really happy to see we waived the 1-week waiting period for the duration of the state of emergency and the crisis with COVID-19 that is getting paychecks into the hands of employees quickly. I think that that's been going well. I was proud to, we moved the sales, meals, and room occupancy taxes, and we also, along with the federal government, moved the tax filing deadline to July 15th. I sit on the housing committee as well. We just passed a bill in the House to put a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures throughout the state of emergency and 30 days after the state of emergency is over. That also includes some commercial spaces as well. So for the small business owners on this call right now that may be paying rent, those protections are there for you as well. Any other questions on this slide?
I think we're going to hold the questions to the end.
Okay. Yep. Well, then I think we can go to the next one.
Okay.
So we'll kick it over to the local leaders that are here: Mike Maresco, Chris Rowland from the Board of Selectmen, and Phil Tavares. The last thing that I did want to touch on very briefly is part of the stimulus package that includes giving the majority of Americans paychecks, as well as the program that started the PPP. The state's due to receive over $2 billion in direct assistance. And in the conversations that myself and the representatives have had with the governor and his administration, they're really putting an emphasis on sending as much money as we possibly can back to our local cities and towns. And it's our hope that the state, when we do this, will give some guidance to local cities and towns to obviously plug a lot of the holes that have been created financially due to the lack of meals taxes, the lack of people being able to pay some of their other taxes and fees on time, things like that, but also to create really community-based grant opportunities for local small businesses, because the PPP program is up to 500 employees. You know, we're really concerned about those shops that have 2 employees, 5 employees, 10 employees, 20 employees that may miss out while the federal government's scrambling to fix the PPP program in itself. And so we really want to see a robust opportunity through the billions of dollars that we're getting from the feds to direct that back to communities like Marshfield, and then Marshfield be able to disperse that to where they see the need the most in the community, with local nonprofits and with local small businesses. We truly want to make as many people whole as possible throughout this entire process. And we know that it's frustrating. We know that we're kind of in uncharted territory, but together doing things like this, I think, is really going to help guide us in the policy making up on Beacon Hill, as well as helping us advocate for Marshfield and the communities on the South Shore to bring this money back to our local communities. So with that said, I'll kick it over to Mike.
Great. Thank you so much, Representative. I just want to start off by thanking our delegation, our state rep and our state senator for all of their support for our residents during this very, very difficult time for them. You know, in Marshfield, I get calls from people, their very concerned about making sure that they're able to hook into unemployment. It's been difficult. People are scared. People are scared about losing their houses. So I applaud our state senator and state rep making sure that there's protections that people won't lose their house. I want to thank our first responders. I know Marshfield Police, Fire, the ambulance. They've been going around the clock on taking care of our residents. We're in uncharted territory. There's not enough of protective gear. I know our police chief and our fire chief are working hard to make sure that we get the necessary equipment that they need to protect themselves so that they can help our residents. And I'm very concerned also about small business and the effect of small business and the meals tax. And, I encourage folks, people say, well, how can we help? I said, call a local restaurant, go pick up something a couple of times a week to help out the small businesses to get them through these very difficult times. Financially, the town of Marshfield, we're holding our own. All of our departments are working well together. Our financial team has been working around the clock, and we've moved town meeting to May 26th and our town election to May 30th to make sure that we're in a good spot financially to be able to work out what we need to do financially through the end of the fiscal year and make the necessary adjustments with the downturn in the economy for the next fiscal year. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Chris Rowland.
Yes.
There you are. Hi.
How are you, Valerie?
Good. Thanks for being here.
Of course. On my side, to go along with what Michael's saying, we're working together as a board and as a leadership team, including our first responders, our DPW, the selectmen and town administrator, and I have to give a lot of credit to Patrick Del Russo, our town, our financial director for our town. As we've said, we're navigating very unforeseen times. In my lifetime, I've never seen anything like this, and I'm rest assured that most of us haven't seen anything like this. And Mike tapped into something very, very poignant, which is fear. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty, and fear and uncertainty breeds, panic and things like that. So, what I'd like to say is, I'd like to thank those people of Marshfield. I know everyone's not perfect, and I know that there's been some concern about social distancing and some things, and we've had to make some tough decisions about, closing parks and closing parking lots for the beaches. But rest assured that we're doing these things because the quicker we flatten the curve, the quicker that we can get back to some kind of new normalcy, the quicker we can get people back on their feet. And working with our state rep, Patrick, and our Senator Patrick, we can do those things. But right now it's very difficult because we aren't in a place where we can even entertain that yet. But, one thing that Michael made a good point. If you want to help, I think we're in a position, even a better position than we've ever been, to shop local if the business is open and it's a necessary business and it's a locally owned business. Bring your business there. I know Amazon can be attractive because it's easy and it's you can get it delivered, but go to our local restaurants. Go to our local shops that like Brant Rock Market or someplace like that is deemed essential, and buy things from them. And if you're feeling like you're a fortunate person in this mess that I'll call it a mess because of just the fact of situations with unemployment and such, buy your family dinner, and then think about if you know someone that isn't as fortunate as you and buy them dinner, or help reach out and make yourself available to people to help go pick up groceries for an elderly neighbor. And I see some of that, and I see these amazing acts of kindness every day, and it gives me a lot of hope. And Marshfield's an amazing town, and I think we do have an advantage over some of the larger cities. They're dealing with even more people with the virus, and maybe not as strong as a local community involvement as a town like Marshfield. So I encourage that, and I know that we'll get through this. Like you said, Valerie, Marshfield people are tough, and we'll get through this, and we'll get through the tough times. And I'm here to help. Not only is my office number there, but I'm happy. Call my cell phone 617-820-3961, and I'm always willing to talk to somebody, and I'll help get them the help they need.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. Chief Sabaris, good afternoon. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome, Valerie.
What can you tell us?
I can tell you that things are going well for us here at the police station. We changed for the first time in the history of the police department the hours the officers work. Everybody is in uniform from the captain down, meaning all of our detectives are in uniform now, our school resource officer, our prosecutor, and our harbor master. And they're either working 12-hour shifts. So there's only 2 shifts a day as opposed to sometimes 4. That cuts down on the amount of interaction they have and the amount of officers that are sharing cruises. So they're working 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. That's it until this is over. And that creates social isolation from each other. The station's being disinfected on a regular basis, as are the cruises. Roll call is outside. Our main lobby is really primarily closed except for an event of a real emergency. We're trying to do as many things as we can by distance or over the telephone. And for the most part, people have been doing great, behaving, and we haven't had the need to really take too much enforcement action. We were having a difficult time with some of the younger adults here in town and some of the kids that were still congregating in groups at the parks and playgrounds. In particular, the skate park had been a real problem for us, but the DPW helped put up some construction fence around it, and with the proper signage. We've only caught people in the area twice since then, and both groups of people were from either Stoughton or Acushnet, so they weren't Marshfield. So I was pleased with that. I think the people here are cooperating. I think they're really starting to get the message now about to do all the right things. Marshfield's known for 3 things as far as I'm concerned. It's beaches, it's great businesses, and it's wonderful people. So they've been cooperating with us, and we're here to help for anything anybody needs.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think we can round up the panel with our Chamber Director, Executive Director, Lara.
Let me unmute myself. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So there's been a lot of information thrown around. I don't want to take too much time because I'd like to get to the questions, but I wanted to thank everyone for being here. For the participants that are listening in today, I need to let you guys know that I'm really proud of the leadership that we have in Marshfield. And at the drop of a hat, these people come together and they always say yes when we, ask them to get together. And we're really lucky to have a team like this that we can all get together and offer you these webinars, and we work well together. Thank you, Michael. Thanks to the Patricks. I joke that I'm going to get them t-shirts, Patrick 1 and Patrick 2. Chief, Chris, you guys are awesome. The Chamber has really worked hard to be a trusted source of information for people in town. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I know that I think, Chris, you were talking about the fear aspect of this. And I've seen a lot of that too with all these things going on Facebook. So I'd really like to direct your attention to the town websites. I know that there's information up on the town of Marshfield. We have a lot of information on our chamber website, which is marshfieldchamber.org. That will give you Marshfield specific information, and that will also give you regional information. Where the Marshfield Chamber is an affiliate of South Shore Chamber, and they have a lot of information on their page. Our social media is updated multiple times a day. We work with the Patricks and the police station and Michael to put out any information that they're putting out so we can get that out there. Thank you, Chief, for your 2 awesome videos. Those were really good, and I saw there were a lot of shares out there. So great job on that. I would like to recognize James from the Marshfield Mariner. He's done an unbelievable job getting information out there. That's something else that we're so lucky to have in this town is media that does an amazing job. James is everywhere and he's always sharing all of our stories, especially with our small businesses. He's everywhere and has been really, really, really great with going around to highlight what a lot of our members are doing. So I'm very thankful for that. MCTV, again, another media outlet that we're so lucky to have. Jonathan and your team, thank you so much. As far as what the chamber has been doing, we've been trying to partner with our members that are able to do things. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of people that have had to close down. And to echo what some of you have already said, there's a lot of help that a lot of people need a lot of help. And I know that there's a lot of focus on the restaurants, but I also want everyone to try to remember, you know, your neighbor who might be a consultant that works from home, or your local event planner, your hairdresser, your nail salon. There's so many people and so many jobs out there that even we didn't even know existed. And I want you to, you know, remember them too. So thank you, Patrick, for all your hard work on trying to make everyone whole. I think that's a really powerful statement. I know that our nonprofits are suffering a lot. These are the organizations in our town that already help the most vulnerable people in our communities. And we need to really make sure that they're able to do the work that they are set out to do. So I really appreciate you guys focusing on that as well and trying to help them. Jim Buttle, I saw him on here a little bit ago. He's been amazing from the Marshfield Boys and Girls Club. And we have partnered, I think we raised around $25,000 for local restaurants, around that number. I know the Molly Fund contributed, Marshfield Public Schools were, you know, feeding the kids that are on assistance. And that has opened up to anybody that needs assistance. We have the food pantry in town. I could go on for hours about all the awesome things that people are doing. I saw Julie Ellis on here, the Chef's Table. Julie's doing amazing work, providing free meals for people in town. So again, please support your local businesses. And I really appreciate you guys keeping us up to date and working really hard to support our town. Marshfield is an awesome place to live and we want to keep it that way. So thank you guys so much.
Awesome. Well, this is going to open us up to discussion, and I think we are doing a great job on our time. So we've got a lot of time that we can allow to give our panelists to answer some questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to go back, and I want to point your attention at that chat feature, and we're going to get to as many as we can. So let's try and go through the first question I have. Before we really jump in, I've heard, and I hope someone can clear this up for me. I have heard that with the forgivable portion of these loan programs, I've heard it reported that the first $10,000 will be forgiven, but then I've also heard it'll be forgiven in the form of a tax credit. Does anyone here have any better insight on how that's actually working and translating for the lender? One of the Patricks, maybe?
Valerie, I know that the tax credit is for small businesses or big businesses who provide paid family medical leave, or that provide the 2 weeks that's given to individuals for sick leave, whether that be to quarantine or whether it be to deal with COVID-19 themselves. That's going to be covered, and businesses will receive a direct dollar for dollar tax credit when it comes to that. But as far as the PPP goes, there's a lot of various different subsections of that where as long as you're spending a majority of the money, I believe it's 75% on payroll, that can be forgiven. And that's a process that the applications will, as they move forward, that's a process that the individual business or nonprofit will work with their bank. But the goal of the program is really to forgive as much debt on small business and nonprofits as possible that is going directly to payroll.
Okay. All right. I see our friends Mo and Dima here from the Mathnasium. I'm going to open up. I have all of your speakers' audios are on mute. I'm going to unmute them so you can ask your question. Okay. Hi, Mo and Dima. How are you?
Hi.
Good to see you today.
Good.
The floor is yours.
How's it going? And actually, I was going to follow up on your $10,000 question as well. So the economic injury disaster loan, the EIDL, that's been around, I think, forever. It had nothing to do with the COVID-19, but it was more that the SBA has always had that. If you choose to apply for that, which you could have applied before they opened up the portals last week, you get $10,000, and it gets and you can refinance it with the PPP. And so you can't have, so the $10,000 one is not forgivable, but you can refinance it into a forgivable one. So I think that was the question so you can't have them both, but you can kind of refinance one to the other.
Okay, this is great. Community conversation. We can all help each other out. I love it.
Yep. And I guess my question was more related to when it comes to the state level. And I understand, like, what you were saying for there needs to be a balanced budget. But is there anything else that you guys are doing at the state level to try to help small businesses out?
Yeah. So the majority of money that the state's going to get from the federal government in our stimulus is going to go back to the cities and towns. And we hope when we give that back to cities and towns that there'll be rental assistance programs for both landlords as well as for tenants. And also we really want to see a robust economic investment that the communities make directly to small businesses. The PPP program is great and it's going to help a lot of people. They're already talking about Secretary Mnuchin is talking about already adding an additional $250 billion to that program and whatever the next sort of federal round of stimulus comes. But we know that that's just not going to be enough when it comes to the direct need that's going to be in each one of these communities. So we think that the best way to do that would be to create some guidance for local cities and towns to use some of the opportunities they have through CDBG, through the Community Preservation Fund, whatever the vehicle is going to be, to allow for this to be opened up and for local businesses to apply to their local governments to get money. And that's one of the things that we've really been plugging the governor on, is that when we do send these funds to cities and towns, obviously money will go for schools, money will go for the things that the lost revenue that they've experienced during this period of time. But we do truly want to create a boots on the ground program for local businesses in each one of the communities.
That's awesome.
I think the thing that I can probably say is been the biggest accomplishment, which at least helps with cash flow and payments and et cetera, is the delay of the taxes. So any of the taxes that were collected on meals, you don't have to pay until June 30th on the slide, I believe. And then the filing deadline was moved to July 15th.
That's great. And just regarding what the thing that Dima typed in the chat. So what we've done, so Mathnasium, we're a math learning site, we've always been all in center until the COVID-19 hit. And we've managed to move our everything over to an online platform, not just Zoom, but also like providing kids writing tablets as well, and providing them the ability to instructors to see what the kids are writing on their screen through this file sharing app. We're willing to try to help roll that out on a very kind of measured basis to the school system. So like, if somebody can kind of give us access to like who, how to do that, like I've tried reaching out to the superintendent and he hasn't gotten back to me. But if there's maybe a principal, a math coordinator, somebody that can do it, I'm very willing to kind of try to do it most on a volunteer basis. I have instructors kind of sitting there not doing anything, they're waiting to be employed. And this is a great opportunity for them to kind of give back to the community as well. So just that we're putting that out there.
That's excellent. Is there anyone that can give him some assistance on who to contact with the schools, so we can take that offline and help them out?
We can take that offline. That would definitely be Jeff Granatino. I know that we're very busy right now rolling out the remote learning plan, but we can definitely look into that for you.
That sounds good.
Okay, great. Julie Ellis, I saw her. There you are.
Hi.
I love it. I love your little chef's table hat on. You have a question.
I do, about the PPP, because one of the things that I know for us, and I keep hearing with other restaurants and organizations is as long as the delay or that we're not allowed to have people gather, these places can't bring back their employees. So the fact that this money, in order to be forgiven, has to be used by June 30th, the timing doesn't seem to work. So is there any, have you heard of any discussion that if that timeline gets pushed past May 4th, that the deadline might get pushed as well for the PPP loans?
Yeah, there's a lot of sort of loopholes that need to be fixed inside of both the Families First and the CARES Act. That is definitely one of them. And another one that I highlighted today in a letter to the governor, and I also reached out in regards to this is something that may impact people in the community. The Families First Act only takes effect on April 2nd. So anyone who had any time off before then, whether they were sick with COVID-19, whether they traveled internationally, were told to quarantine, none of them are covered right now from any employment benefits. So there's a lot of stuff that the feds are going to have to clean up when they look at both the Families First bill that was signed almost immediately into play, as well as the CARES Act when it comes to PPP, dealing with businesses. I think that seasonal businesses need to be addressed. We heard from folks in Hull that aren't going to be able to open their business, but also kind of fall in this gray area of, how do we determine their loss of business because they don't actually have employees because they're seasonal. So there's a lot of stuff, and we've been in touch. I know that Representative Kearney has talked to Senator Markey's office and Representative Keating and Representative Lynch. So we've let our federal delegation know that there are a lot of things that need to be cleaned up in that, and we have made note of that, and we will continue to make note of that to our federal delegation to hopefully have a lot of these things fixed.
Thank you.
And as you know, just even from the local level and probably from your business, everyone in the United States is taking this day by day, and we're trying to figure it out on the go. So at first, schools were closed until, a couple days ago. We pushed it back a month because we obviously knew that wasn't going to be, we weren't going to be able to reopen schools in the beginning of April. So we're going to have to look at what the numbers are this week, look at what the numbers are next week, see what the third week of April looks like. And then, we're going to have to reassess if the continuation of stay-at-home orders and non-essential businesses being closed continues past May 4th. I think that there'll be a lot of support for pushing that June 30th deadline down the road.
Thank you.
I have a question about the process with the banks.
Go ahead, Jane. I was just about to call on you. You had a great question in the chat as well.
So first off, my situation is we have 2 employees. We're a brand young company, 2 employees, and 10 to 20 independent contractors that we pay. And I know that they can apply on their own for relief, but we still have to pay them, whether or not they apply or get covered. So is there a way that can be taken into consideration in our applications? And secondly, is it kind of up to the bank what they approve? Like what they think you're eligible for? It seems like in all these gray areas, if it's not decided yet by the government, then it's basically the bank making that decision before they put the application through to the SBA.
So are you asking what would be an appropriate amount of money for you to request based on the fact that you are a newer business?
Well, yeah, you can. It's a factor of your payroll,
right?
So I'd like to include the payroll that we pay these independent, even though they're independent. It's still basically an employee. Or, we still have to pay them to have the business running. I know that that's an unusual situation, but it makes a big difference. And again, because we were a new business last year, we started out the first 6 months and didn't pay ourselves anything. We were trying to be ultra conservative and shore up some money. So we just started paying ourselves last September. So if you take last year and divide it by 12, then it's a minuscule amount of money. So does the bank decide what time frame to consider, or does it have to be the government?
So if I could just take this for a second, and I just want to clarify what you're asking. So are you asking that you want to be able to include 1099 employees as a part of your PPE loan?
Well, I mean, I've asked that question before, and everybody says no. I'm just telling you as representatives on what it means to those of us on the business side of things, because even though they can apply, they're applying and not actually working for us. So to get the work done, we still have to pay them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If it's a graphic designer that we normally pay via a subcontractor, she can apply on her own and get relief, but we still have to pay her if she does work for us.
Could I interject for 1 second? I'm sorry, this is Tom from Superior Exteriors. I have the law right in front of me that was written, and this has been a very, very hot topic for me all week, going through the exact same situation that you're going through.
Okay.
So basically what's saying is what qualifies for payroll costs, a compensation to employees whose principal residence is the United States, salary, wages, commission, and similar compensation, cash tips, and equivalent. And here's where it gets really hairy. It also does say independent contractors in that section, but then you scroll over 2 pages and it reads that in the PPP loan, no independent contractors no independent contractors have the ability to apply on their own, so you're not allowed to double dip, basically. But in the bill, it's written 2 different ways. Someone didn't catch it, and that's kind of the question that we're running into right now. So I feel your pain, and I totally agree with you, because in our business, it's the same exact thing, and we're trying to clarify that. And I've gotten answers, but I've gotten 7 different ones.
Right.
So I've talked to my accountant, I've talked to the bank, nobody has the answer. They're waiting for clarification. So
yeah, so that's why we're, as representatives, can you take it up the flagpole and get clarification?
Yeah, definitely.
We definitely will. And Greg from my office, and I think Katie from Pat's office are on this, Daria as well from my office. So we'll take this back. And if you could just put your information in the chat, we'll take this offline and get back to both you, Tom, and you, Jane, in regards to this. And what we'll do is we'll ask the feds. I think that this might be one of those same situations that Julie brought up, where it's just a gray area that the 7 different answers you may get may be interpreted all those different ways. This is just what happens when you put out an 800-page bill in such a short period of time. There's things that are gonna come up that are gonna be errors, and this clearly seems like one too.
Well, there's a lot of special circumstances and unique businesses that aren't just retailers, restaurants that fall under these very gray areas that don't have a lot of good roadmaps to how they can get assistance. So to that, I see an excellent question from my good friend Laurel, and I'd love to invite her to ask her question because it's in the same vein, and I think we can just layer on that. And even if we can't layer on that, it's just another point of view from similar, I know I'm in the same boat, about the types of businesses and clarification that we need to know as business owners in the community. So Laurel, hi.
Hi, Valerie. Hopefully you can hear me. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't test my mic before I went on. I had to change out my headset. So just to Laura's point, and certainly to Val's, there are other businesses out there that are considered small businesses that are working nationally, that may not have employees. I just want to have that be some kind of recognition that there are those of us who are working now without, honestly, by the time I work with 10 of the largest banks in the country, and all I want is for those businesses to be able to get back to work and for their employees to be able to get back to work so that I can work with them. I heard from one of my clients that they don't think that they're going to see another employee, a coworker, until August. For me, that will mean, my work with them has longer lead times than most. So a 3 to 4 month lead time means that I probably won't be doing work this entire year with some of those banks. So actually with most of my customers. So I'm just looking for some kind of finality as to when we are all going to be able to get back to work in this country. I know nobody's going to be able to answer that today, but I just trying to point out that it's important for some of us to know when and if that's going to happen, because taking things 2 weeks at a time is very difficult for those of us who have to plan far ahead.
I think her issue is that she's a contractor and none of these programs apply.
She works for the bank.
So
I'm sorry,
I can definitely.
Are you asking me a question?
I can definitely relate, especially with long lead times. I have things sitting in a country club in Phoenix, Arizona for an event that was supposed to happen just days from this outbreak. So there are lead times and considerations. I haven't seen anything that addresses that specificity and uniqueness. I'm interested in hearing how that could accommodate myself, but I haven't heard anything that addresses that. It's not your standard, we don't sell gift baskets. It's not that kind of transaction.
Right.
And it could be an impact. But to that point, I know no one has a good idea on when we will open. What I would like to see if we can ask is the process to reopen as we start to think about it. We are a ways away. What can we expect? Maybe this is a good question for you, Chief. In terms of soft openings, is there going to be a plan? How will this be rolled out? I don't anticipate one day we just flip a switch and June 1st we can all run out, just business as usual. Are there plans and things being discussed about how you reopen?
Yeah, so every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the town administrator, myself, and a bunch of department heads partake in a conference call. And there's all different types of discussions that go on with this. But our town administrator, in conjunction with the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen, I think would have plans in place based on the recommendations of the governor. I don't want to speak for the town administrator. Michael, would you like to?
Sure. Let me jump in, Chief. You're absolutely correct. We don't do this by ourselves. We do a lot of communicating amongst the boards, and it's one of the things that we're starting to look at, because we think we could see the top of the mountain, and we want to be able to help our citizens get back to as normal lifestyle that they could have, and we have to look at how quickly we can do that when we get the green light from the administration, that the kids can get back to school, that businesses can open, we can roll back on some of the social distancing, people can get out, go to restaurants, go to movies, really start to socialize again. I don't think it will be as challenging as some people think. I think really it's going to be driven, I think, by the Board of Health, by the Department of Public Health, by the administration, based on a lot of medical research of when they think that we've hit rock bottom, and that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think it's from that point, then as public service, public government, we would make a determination of how quickly, in consultation with the Board of Health, can we get businesses back open, get the restaurants back open. But, it's something, I don't see it happening in the next few weeks, but it gives us plenty of time to really discuss it in a very, very rational manner, and then come up with a process that's going to help everybody. Us in town government, we want to get things back to normal as quickly as possible. We want to see people back to work. We want to see all of our small businesses open. We want to see people making money. People make money. They're able to pay their bills. That helps run local government, state government, and the federal government. We're going to do whatever is necessary.
Have there been any discussions about what social distancing will look like, if restaurants will have bigger spaces between tables? Has that been anything? These are just things that, you know, as we start to think about, has that even been discussed yet? We anticipate that?
We haven't discussed that, Valerie, but that is a question that a number of people have asked. You know, when people talk about the end of COVID-19, what does that really mean? Does that mean suddenly there are no cases, period? And then what does that mean for how we conduct our lives beyond COVID-19? And to your point about the restaurants, you know, if occupancy at a restaurant's 100, do we now go to 50 until there's a cure? Because is this going to come back? How quickly will it come back? How quickly are the drug manufacturers going to come up with a medical solution? So these are all things that we look at, and we're going to continue to talk about and have meaningful solutions.
Okay, excellent.
Valerie, sorry, I guess I just wanted to kind of get to the crux of my question, which was, if it takes 3/4 of my year to even start to do business now, that 2.5 months of PPP that everybody's talking about is not sufficient. So I just would like to let the two Pats understand that there has been, you know, just damage that has been done that is far beyond that. I just wanted to make that point.
And it's tough. I mean, I'm very much in the same boat. And I think what a lot of people in our situation struggle with right now is, I don't really want a loan. I can't really afford to take a loan on business, especially with events. I don't know that events are coming back that quickly. I think when we prioritize how we reopen and what we get to, I don't know if people are going to run right back to conferences and things that Laurel and I are very much in a similar field of work. We're not sure about that. So we have to mitigate the risk of taking out more loans and being burdened with loans from revenue that can't be reclaimed. So I don't know if there's special circumstance, but we'd love it if you could think about folks like us when you're having these discussions.
No, and we definitely will. We definitely will. We know that there are people who don't fit into a lot of these criteria, who some of this federal programming will just not be sufficient enough, and we totally understand that more is going to have to be done to try and, you know, really touch as many people as we possibly can with the assistance that the federal government and the state government want to provide.
Excellent. So we also have some nonprofits. I see some of our most beloved nonprofits in town on this call right now. I see a great question from Chris White. I'd love to give you the floor. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Valerie. Actually, Pat O'Connor sent me an answer to it already. I was asking about if anything was being done for organizations with more than 500 employees, because we have all the same problems as the smaller groups, we're just bigger. The size doesn't change our margin, which is next to nothing. But Pat sent me a link.
Well, that's great. Maybe we can take all of these links and add them to the Marshfield, the Chamber Facebook page as well.
We definitely can. Pat, if you guys can have Daria, Greg, Katie, shoot me over a text or an email, and I can add all this information to our website, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that Chris is talking about. Literally 2 days ago, the feds, 3 days ago, the feds issued new guidance of individuals with over 500 employees still eligible for PPP. So, you know, as these things continue to roll out, especially the PPP, and if that's going to be the main fund that the feds established to kind of try and get as many people as possible, there's going to be more and more guidance issued. And as that's going out, you know, a lot of the issues that you brought up, Laurel and Valerie, and a lot of people on this, we're going to make our federal delegation know that they need to touch more people, that there's still gray areas when it comes to both, you know, paid time off, when it comes to, you know, investments into our small businesses. There are still a lot of people that aren't covered, and we get it.
Pat, can I jump in just for a quick second?
Yeah.
When do you guys, so you talk about bringing it up the flagpole and, you know, talking to other people, when do you think that you'll have some answers for us?
I mean, some of the answers, like on the economic disaster relief loan, as it's, as you can see in the chat, some of that stuff is regulations, and those things have been changing on a day-to-day basis. Some of the stuff with the PPE loans are in statute. So that's obviously more difficult to change with the gridlock in Washington. But as we've really tried to reiterate, and in our conversations with the senators' offices, the congressmen's offices, there is a huge appetite to actually be able to get some things done. There was an 800-page bill, $2 trillion of stimulus that was floated. There's another stimulus package that they're trying to put in the pipeline. And some of this stuff with what's in statute will hopefully be cleaned up with various inputs from state and local officials.
Yeah, and as I said, I mean, the one thing that we're going through, our staff, and I know that Rep. Kearney's staff is still going through the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which was signed the middle of March. And as I said, there's, we have people who work in hospitals, who are nurses, who got COVID-19 in the middle of March, who took 2 weeks off to quarantine, returned to the front lines, and all of their sick time has been depleted because they're not covered under the Families First Act because it doesn't start until April 2nd. So there's a lot of stuff that we're working on the feds to really try and tighten up. And we get it, trust me. And we're sending a lot of this over to our federal delegation almost daily on things that we're seeing, boots on the ground, how we're seeing this impact in our communities. And we're seeing that that there are gray areas, there are loopholes, and there are people who aren't getting the assistance they need.
Okay, one question. Now that the weather is going to get a little bit better, not today, obviously, with the damp rain weather we have right now, and the storm coming in a little later this afternoon, what is the official policy with the beaches? Are you allowed to go on the beach if you're walking distance? I see a lot of the parking lots are closed down, but what's the official policy?
You want me to do that, Michael, or do you want to take it?
Sure.
Okay. So our beaches are open to the public to enjoy. And, we have miles and miles of coastline. So we want people to get out there and get some fresh air and, get some physical exercise. And also, hopefully, it'll help them mentally, too, because this is a tough time we're in. Now, the idea of closing the beach parking lots, not all of them are closed. Most of them are closed. And those are the ones that draw in people from out of town. So we did not want people coming in from out of town and invading our beaches, congregating in large groups of people, in particular down Green Harbor or in Wrexham. So if those parking lots fill up, there's narrow paths to the beach, and people have to walk by each other, and they're certainly not going to be within 6 feet. And we're trying to do what we can in the best interest of everybody's health. There was also comments that were made after the video that I did about, well, why can't we just have people out there working, handing out pamphlets, or talking to people and just letting Marshfield residents in. We don't want anyone interacting with anyone. We don't want anybody passing one piece of paper to another person because it could be contaminated. Those are the things that help spread this terrible virus. So we're just putting measures in place to slow the spread. We know we're not going to stop it, but we can slow it. So that's what we're trying to do. There's plenty of other places that people can park that are from town that can enjoy the beach, and we welcome you to do so.
And just to touch on what the chief is saying, when you look at some of these data points that Dr. Birx brings up, the real sort of modeling that they're trying to use, one of the biggest ones is obviously from the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation of the University of Washington. And the social distancing has been working. We continuously see these models that the University of Washington does one every single day with the new numbers for each state. I highly recommend that. I'll put the link in the chat. And Massachusetts has seen really significant decreases in our modeling as far as how much death there's going to be associated with COVID-19, as well as the amount of new cases and the longevity in which they anticipate this happening. And with the governor's mission earlier this week to do contact tracing, potential remedies and therapies coming online at some point in time, relatively soon. There's a lot of things to be really proud of as far as how our local communities, our first responders, our local leaders got together, highlighted the importance of social distancing, did as much as they possibly could, and truly saved lives. And And so doing things in a responsible way, and Chief, I give you and your team a lot of credit, and Mike as well. The communities all really came together, and the impacts are being felt.
I was just looking something up in regards to the question with the beaches and, exchanges with people that in policing, in forensic science, we deal with Locard's principle, and it holds that the perpetrator of a crime will bring something into the crime scene and leave something behind from it. We don't want to leave germs behind, nor do we want to bring them into town.
Understood. I think we all feel the same way. No more germs. Does anyone else, before we wrap up today, and I want to thank you, we've got a little bit over time, but does anyone have, you can use the little raise your hand icon, or you can just wave at me quickly. If there's any other burning questions I don't want to leave without. Oh, I see one. Hi, Mo. Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. And I have one last question, not as a small business owner, but more as like a kind of just a citizen. So with the, is anyone reaching out to the banks, either at the state or federal level, and saying, all right, we got to do, we have to have like a forbearance program set in place, not on the bank by bank level, like this bank wants to do this and this, like something that like is more legislative that says, all right, you guys, you can't take any more payments for 4 months. You take those 4 months of payments and you roll it up into the next 18 months or something, It's not that, people don't want to pay their mortgages and rent, but just like at some point, like kind of, until the income starts coming in again.
There's ongoing discussions about that, and I know that there are a couple reps that are drafting that language with House Counsel right now.
Yeah, we expect some sort of loan modification and forbearance or repayment plan legislation at some point in time.
Okay, is it coming like before the next mortgage payments due, or is it coming like down the line?
Right now, there's the legislation that we're bringing up right now has to do with renters and landlords to try and keep as many of those folks in their units as possible. And I know that that's being discussed right now amongst legislative leadership. That hopefully will get done at some point in time in the not so distant future. My hope is by Monday. There's going to be differences between the House bill and the Senate bill. And then they'll have to resolve those differences. And then I think after we take care of the renters and the landlords, I think after that we need to really look hard at homeowners and their mortgages. So my hope is very soon. Obviously, everything's moving at an incredibly quick pace, and this is on the list. And every conference call that I'm part of, we need to figure out what to do with homeowners.
3 weeks from tomorrow is the 1st of May. So
the only other update, I have another update, and there's just some information that's coming in. I know that the Senate just sent the House back a bill regarding the MCAS this year. I know there's a lot of local leaders on this call that talk with parents in the Marshfield School District, and the bill that the Senate just sent us would cancel the MCAS requirement for school districts this year. So we'll see what happens with that bill, but I know they just sent it back today.
Thanks, Patrick.
Well, are there any other questions? We've gone over time a little bit. Everyone's been so generous with their time and attention and taking addressing everyone's concerns. Is there anyone else before we wrap up today?
Just really quickly, this is Connie, and I put a note in the chat, but sadly, one of the admins on the Marshfield Mass Forum, and I invite all of you, I put my email address up there, but I invite all of you to put any information that you have there as well. We've turned on post approvals, so that's turned off a lot of the memes and the sophomoric posts that get added there, and that we have more than 18,000 members in that forum, so it's a good place to reach out to people. And I'd like to have one column with just qualified authoritative information. So please feel free to reach out to me or post, and I'll tag it and make sure it gets highlighted.
Thank you, Connie.
Awesome.
Great. And we'll be sure we have these slides that we'll post. We've got a lot of great resources from this chat. We've got some wonderful leaders that are willing to engage with you and answer your questions. And I think we'll probably be looking forward to hosting another one of these in a few weeks as more information and a lot of updates and things are moving fever pitch fast. So I want to thank all of our panelists today for sharing their insights, their information with us. I want to thank all of you for joining us and being here today. And, keep your chin up, keep your spirits up, stay tough. We're going to get through this together, because together we will get through it. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
So much.